Welcome to Carole Tuesday, week 20. We're 20 weeks into this show now. And last week was, for me, a bit of a letdown. Some of the payoffs to the build-ups that we'd seen in past episodes just kind of didn't work out for me. And as for some of the stuff that they brought up, I felt like that wasn't really going anywhere either. Some things that I thought they should have dwelled on more, they didn't dwell on as much as maybe they should have. And overall, it was just kind of a disappointment for me. Let's hope this week is better. I don't want to go too long of intro on this because last week the episode was 25 minutes long. So without further ado, let's get started. I think I figured out what exactly about the show that I don't like. So when I was watching a couple of other shows. Most recently, another show about music, which you may or may not remember. It's from 2007 called Nodame Cantabile. That show's about music as well, more explicitly so than this one. It's very much about classical music and piano playing and all that. But the thing about that show is the two main characters really struggle to find their place in the musical world. It's not easy for them to do so. They don't really have a just straightforward path in trying to find out what they want to do even. One of the main characters wants to do something completely different from what everyone around her is pushing her to do, but she only really wants to do that because she's afraid of failing at the thing that she's actually good at. And that's the kind of mid-20s, early 20s kind of life struggle that you expect from a show like this that does deal with people who are trying to be successful. But the difference between this show and that show for me is that show really tried to figure out the mentality of these characters and try to get inside their head and try to explain and understand them. And this show, Carole Tuesday, don't really feel like characters. They just feel like someone that's there and stuff is happening to them and they don't really do anything about it. Passive protagonists kind of can be done if you do it well, but I feel like the show is not really intending to play off of that trope. It's really just more failing to make them active in any meaningful capacity. So they're just kind of sitting around waiting for the river to throw them their next bone. And I don't really like that the show has turned them into that. Not to say that they were ever not that, or maybe they were not that, because the first thing we know about Tuesday is that she ran away from home to be a musical artist. We really haven't dealt with the fallout of that really at all. Carole's really rough past we haven't really dealt with at all. The show's almost done. There's only 4 more episodes left. We really don't understand the characters that much more than we did at the beginning, and they haven't really faced any big challenge that would make them grow at all. The only challenge, there's a mild, tiff that they had before the finals of the talent show. That's pretty much it. Not really much else more than that. At this point, I'm just trying to dissect. This is we're basically into post-mortem territory at this point. I'm trying to figure out what went wrong with this show more so than anything else. Let me know if you still like watching the show. That would be an interesting perspective to hear from. Let's keep watching. So I don't know if this is the commentary they're trying to make here, but it feels like since Ezekiel is kind of this new wave hip hop type stereotype that they're making him out to be, this might be an interesting way to talk about how his past influenced his art and the things that he talks about. But we never really got any mention of what it is that he makes music about. We just got introduction to him as a character, and we're supposed to deduce from him having purple hair and 2 lip piercings that he's somehow an edgy, bad person. We never even saw his musical set. I don't know why they're doing this. It seems like they could be talking more about her past in this sense, but they're just picking this one guy up from there and pointing him out to us as this is the type of person that Carole knew when she was younger. Or this is the type of person that person turned into. And maybe we're supposed to think that Carole is lucky and that she escaped, but it doesn't really make sense if we don't really know much about her past before we meet this guy, because giving us context now would just be justifying it after the fact, after we've seen this character. I would have really liked to see them go more into it before, but that again plays into what I've been saying with the characterization of these characters. Never really flesh them out as anything more than vessels for the show to take place. Kind of feels bad to say that, but yeah, there's really no other way to look at it other than that. And just them being even nominated for the new Grammy artist with only a single out, it feels like they're the ones being pushed artificially through the system rather than Angela. If you've ever read the book 1984, in that book, they talk about like the main character thinks that he's escaping the system, but actually what he's, the rebellion that he's experiencing is actually already part of the system. In that way, it feels like Carole and Tuesday and the kind of organic music that they make like you would think that it would be like an antithesis to the the way the system works, but it seems like with the way they're being promoted, they're actually more effective at being successful in system than the things designed to be successful. So who's actually being pushed? Carole and Tuesday or Angela? Even though she's had all the calculations and money behind her from the start, Carole and Tuesday have managed to basically pip her at every turn despite having basically no resources. So is that more about how you can't really create success with money, or is it more about like the organic way that like a grassroots musical movement can take place? To me, it seems more like the former than the latter, but that might be just because I'm cynical. Let's keep watching. This is what I wanted to hear about. So, like, since we're dealing with this like political figurehead character who has a lot to do with Trump in terms of her policies, I really want to hear about the ground level stuff, like what Ezekiel is talking about now, like how immigrants who come across the border don't really have any way to get good employment because they don't have documentation of any kind. That leads to labor exploitation where they can be paid below market wages because they have no other option but to accept it. And just their whole life kind of sucks, and they end up like falling in with bad people if they don't have the right kind of support and family structure around them, which leads to all kinds of other stuff. And that need not necessarily be just an immigrant thing. It could be just a generally disenfranchised, impoverished type thing that could happen. And clearly this is something that's happened to him that we may now hear about. This is what I wanted to know about from the beginning. I don't know why they didn't tell us more about Carole's story from the start, but I'll be glad to hear some now, at least 20 episodes into a 24 episode show. I'm not going to talk about the textures in these backgrounds. They're just really, really bad. So we'll just leave those alone. I just want to talk about one thing that he said, because this is interesting to me. He said, like, my next song will explode in their faces. And specifically, he's a rapper. Just reminded me of the Anthony Bourdain show, No Reservations, where he deliberately goes to all these places that kind of are like a powder keg that may ignite at any second or have ignited in the past. And he like goes and seeks out the rebellious part of the society there, like the counterculture, like, what the young people are doing. And more often than not, in these places where you would not expect it, where, military dictatorships and like people are getting put under curfews and it's martial law sometimes. More often than not, in the clubs, it's all this really angry, anti-authoritarian, like anti-authority, anti-establishment hip-hop that's going on mostly. And it feels like Ezekiel is kind of like a figure that's doing that. Why he plays at Cydonia Fest kind of feels like it's against the point of his message if he's just trying to get the establishment to feel the pain of the immigrants and where he's from, but he already has such a big platform like Cydonia Fest. It kind of feels like, again, the anti-establishment is being bought through the system more than even so the system itself, represented by someone like Angela. It's just weird to me that people like Carole Tuesday and Ezekiel are so heavily promoted despite clearly being against the point of the system itself. The show may not be trying to make this point, but by including them in the story of the show and having them feature prominently in like mainstream events like Mars Got Talent and whatnot, it really feels like the point of their message is not getting across and they're just coming across as novelty, which is, again, not good for any kind of cause or forwarding any movement, really. Let's keep watching. Just to make a point of how this whole like deep fake thing is working in the current world, since this, this dystopian / utopian / cyber society, which didn't quite turn out the way that we would expect a cyber society to turn out, how this is going in the present day. So a dude working at a company got a call from his boss asking him to transfer a certain amount of money to a certain account. He, of course, obeyed what his boss said because that's what you do as employees. You listen to what your boss says. Turns out that call was fake. It was a deep fake call from someone else entirely. And that dude is now, probably fired. It's the first known case in my mind of someone using deep fakes to commit any kind of scam like this. It certainly won't be the last, so look forward to many, many more of that. As in response to what the show is specifically referencing with this Angela replica slash hologram, if your image is owned by a corporation, they can use it in perpetuity without really any, giving any money to you, because after you die, apparently they don't have to pay you for your likeness. That's certainly going to happen with the deep fakes and holograms and everything, so we have that to look forward to. That was basically a music video cut into the episode, right? We cut from them like talking about Amer to just saying we need to write a Grammy album. Then we cut into like this, 1.5 minute music video that was cut into it. I'm 100% sure that they're going to release this on YouTube if they haven't already. So stay tuned for that, I guess. It really feels like we're trying to connect the dots between the music at this point. They're making sure to include music in every single episode now. So I guess they know where their bread is buttered, because as I've said before, and I kind of shared the numbers a little bit before, pretty much every Carole Tuesday song that they've put out has gotten like multiple hundreds of thousands of hits even before releasing in the West. And it just came out on Netflix this past week. I don't know what the reception is like as of yet. We'll see what like the critics say and what kind of the community's general reaction is, because it doesn't really feel like anyone is watching this week to week. In the broader community, just like the more niche weekly audience, like the people watching this and me, I guess. So we'll see what the reaction is. But only the first 12 episodes are out on Netflix for some reason, even though the 13th episode is the one where the talent show ends. I guess they wanted to split it up evenly between 12 and 12. Initially, I thought this show was going to be, 26 episodes, but if they're going to split it up into 12 in the first part, then I guess the second part has to be another 12. I don't know. Let's keep watching. No, I'm sorry, no. That was horrible. Oh, that was so bad. Yo. Okay. Maybe they don't mean this guy's like Uzi Vert, even though he looks like him vaguely. Maybe they mean he's like Travis Scott. I don't know. As far as I know, none of these new wave rappers really have that much of an anti-establishment message to begin with. But remove the S, spell it backwards. That's not a bar. I'm sorry. That's just really bad. Drop the crack? When did anyone say anything about crack in this whole show? It's been 20 episodes. Who did they get to write this? They just like pick a random rapper off the street and be like, write a vaguely anti-establishment rap set on Mars, but like throw in robots, even though the robots haven't done anything to anyone yet. Why didn't he say anything about Valerie Simmons? Why didn't he say anything about like the weather station getting blown up, if this is a new song, for example? Why didn't he say anything about like the immigrant? No, he didn't say anything about that. He just said drop the crack, start a riot. No one said anything about crack. I don't know why we had to know that he speaks Spanish. I feel like I'm doing a music review, like track review, like Fantano at this point. I'm also loving this like Brian McKnight black and white, slow motion close up. They also had the overcrank slow motion before when he was standing around the dumpster fire. It's good that they included a dumpster fire in this song, because that's what the song is. So it's good that they're so on the nose with it. Called it. I called it. I knew that they were responsible for some bombing shit. I knew it. I said that they were. I called it. They're going to blame this on immigrants. Called this like 3 episodes ago. Again, I know you show your twists I see coming from miles and miles beforehand. Let's keep going. This is clearly paralleling some real life events wherein dark-skinned people get hit by police. I think 21 Savage had some visa problems recently, or I may be completely wrong about that. But clearly they're trying to like play on current events that are happening with people getting arrested. But the way they make it, like the way it plays out in the episode, it makes it sound like he got arrested for the song that he did, which was just like vaguely angry and not really specific about any threats or anything that someone might have against the government in general. So for him to be arrested for that seems a little bit weird. Or maybe it was just a routine ICE raid, and they literally called it ICE in this show too. The ICE is like you know, ICE is if you live in the US. They're the people that put the kids in the cages and whatnot. Little on the nose with the comparisons and such, but without making any real point. Like if he had said like bomb the weather station or something stupid like that, then they arrested him saying we think he's related to that. You know, if he said bomb anything, he didn't say bomb anything. He said start a riot. The riot didn't bomb the weather station. There's no probable cause other than he, you know, arrested immigrants. But like people don't get that motivated if you just overstayed your visa. If you did something violent, they're more, you know, they're more provoked to do something about it. I thought we already knew that. I thought that was known knowledge. She said that at the beginning of this episode. She said, I'm using you to achieve my dream. Soon we'll be able to achieve my dream of winning a Grammy. You will achieve my dream. She said that like 5 times at the beginning of this episode. And the way she said, you're just using me to achieve your dream. It's like she's having some kind of revelation when she was literally told the answers to the test like 15, 20 minutes ago. Good one, Angela, I guess. Writers, are you falling asleep at the wheel here? We literally just went over this. It's like, you can say, I'm tired of being used to achieve your dream. You can't say you're just using me to achieve your dream because we already knew that. It's not new knowledge. It's not a revelation. There's no emotional impact to those words. You can be like, I've done so much for you. I'm done. I'm out. She could say that. But now she's making it sound like she thought she was working for her own dream this whole time, and it turns out it wasn't, which we already know she didn't think because of the conversation they had in the mint cab earlier in this episode. That was Carole Tuesday episode 20, a weird episode to say the least. We got some minor plot developments with Carole talking to her former companion and best friend from back in the refugee camp. They both came from Earth to Mars and they just overstayed their visa, which is kind of a nice immigrant tale. And then they both just happened to get into music, with Amer becoming like this kind of provocative rapper guy who then gets arrested because he says things I guess the government doesn't like, and they conduct like an immigration raid on him and arrest him. Of course, if he was actually a successful artist, he wouldn't just be deported like that. He'd probably have some kind of legal representation that would make it really hard for them to do such a thing. Or he could apply for a different visa or something. When you have money, these things tend to work out. Carole, on the other hand, learns that he's now just an edgy guy, and he changed from what he used to be in the past. That's her arc in this episode, which isn't really much of an arc. And then we get the final bit about Angela learning that she's adopted, I guess. And then her guardian like collapsing from heart disease or heart attack or whatever. She was clutching her heart earlier in the episode. Weird episode. Oh, we also learned the super obvious fact that Valerie Simmons and her consultant Jerry are somehow behind the weather station bombing. We basically already knew that. There's not much else that you can say about that. Other than that, this episode, we got maybe like the one good cut of animation that we've seen in the past 5 or 6 episodes, where Carole was skateboarding and she went up into the air for like a second, but the backgrounds were so terrible in that shot that it kind of cancels out in the end. Other than that, what else to say? We got 2 weird songs. One, probably the worst rap song I've ever heard in my life. Second, kind of the more generic indie track, which is basically just a music video they inserted into the show. The wheels are really starting to fall off the Carole Tuesday wagon as we head into the final, straightaway here, about to cross the finish line. I don't know what else to say but that. It's a strange feeling to have started from a place and being reached so far and yet not really covered anything at all. I already talked about how the characters just feels like things were happening to them, not really anything else other than that. We'll just leave it at that for this week. We'll keep a short episode. How about that? The coming weeks are going to get more and more monotonous as the show just goes over what it's already said again and again, heading into the final week. I guess Netflix really only cares about the first little bit of the show, and after that the budget just gets stretched really, really thin, which is why we get all these kind of, compilation shots of him, the rapper Ezekiel, pulling a Brian McKnight black and white close-up from the 90s music video. Have they seen any rap music video from the, recent times? It's all about flashy camera tricks, camera robots zooming in and out. That's really what it's about these days. But I guess since he's kind of edgy and anti-establishment, he can't be that anti-establishment. He's getting nominated for a Grammy. And they call it a Grammy in this world too. not really an interesting episode. This show is going to be interesting to see what it turns out at the end, because it's going to be 24 episodes of something. The end is really going to define the rest of it to me, because we haven't really gotten much up until this point. That's it for this week, Carole Tuesday. As you can see, I'm quite disappointed with this episode, as I was with last week's, because it feels like we're covering the same beats every episode. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tell me what you think of the show. A couple of you have already expressed that you're not really enamored with it as much as you used to be. As you can see, I am not either. But that's it for this week, and I'll see you in the next episode.